Hi guys, not long gone, 4:30 EU close, so just going to run through the main movers for today and briefly touch upon the calendar for tomorrow. What's going to be coming out. We've got a bit of data early on in the morning, so it could be quite an interesting day ahead tomorrow, and of course Thursday and Friday. Data wise today, not too much really came out. ZEW was a bit better than expected, but not being the toppest of top tier, the market reaction was quite contained really. Euro didn't move too much, and seeing as we're on the Euro, you can see here, we talked about it during the day, but the lows of yesterday evening and today working quite well as a good area of support. The main move happening once we broke this trend line, you can see price was really sort of getting squeezed in here over the last sort of few days. Let me just remove that level of support. We'll get the breakthrough here, and then R1, what day is this? The 19th, the high of the 19th, and then R2 eventually came quite quickly. We'll be keeping an eye for those sticking around, or even into tomorrow if we don't get down there on, you know, another test of perhaps this trend line to now act as an area of support. You've also got the 123 level there on the futures. A lot of this sort of been driven by the weaker dollar, and that is something I'll come on to later on in terms of where the dollar index is at on a larger scale period. It could be that for those analysts who are predicting some sort of correction for the dollar, could be not too long away if we're going off a sort of technical level there. Helped as well by the weaker dollar we saw throughout today. The pound did push on, and we had another break of that 140 to only find nice resistance around the R1 on the first test of that. So pound, if you're on the day, is actually as we speak up by 1 tick, so up and down for the pound. You can see the area of support where we did eventually push on from, where yesterday evening we talked about in the briefing it could have been from anywhere around here, and it's was perhaps a tricky trade to take on. If you did fancy this level, you probably would have got stopped out on 139.56, but it was a strong area of resistance before the push up happened, and it was when we really broke out of this range that we were in for quite some time.
Agrees with Powell on orderly liquidation powers.
Nothing there, it seems, and then we pushed higher, and R1 came quite quickly at a time when the dollar really was weakening to the lowest levels we've seen for a while. Aussie dollar, just want to mention it as it's come to a really interesting level and found resistance. Iron ore prices are dropping quite vastly, and some analysts believe that's still to continue. So Aussie dollar taking a hit overnight and into the morning. My friend who works for sort of a commodities broker in place believes that it's still going to continue, and if we can link that in with the dollar strengthening as well off these technical levels we'll come on to, could be a half decent trade opportunity in the short term to hold for a while. Yen against the dollar, yeah, dollar yen, nice break of that low that we found early this morning and from last week. I'll just circle those levels up. Really good price action around here. Breakthrough, come back to test it along with S1 was a decent opportunity here, and you can see the move lower is still sort of continuing. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on this point as an area of resistance if we were to retrace higher to get a test of that. Some half decent opportunities there. I know some people got caught up in the DAX in the morning. We will come through to talk about that as well, but just before that, ahead of the APIs in four and a bit hours, oil had a nice technical break as well. Similar sort of pattern here to the euro, in that the highs that we've had recently, let me just try and get this as accurate as possible in a short time period. There you go. Nice breakthrough of this trend line here. Second test strong, third, fourth holds well. Then we broke through, came back, found support on also that trend line and what was really the sort of the previous highs of the day. and we pushed on since then. Found resistance on the first test, and then now broken through and looking to find support. In terms of where oil could go, obviously the data today and tomorrow could really restrict things, or it could be the catalyst that sort of pushes it on a bit. The high of the year, not completely miles away. It could be the data overnight or into tomorrow that sees us up there, but like I said, it could easily send us back down. So something to be wary of going into the evening and tomorrow. S&P was really interesting this morning in the fact, let me just put these on 15-minute quickly and talk about it at the same time. We had the push overnight into the early hours, and the equities just started to find a bit of support. You can see here, I'm just going to circle this area around sort of 10 o'clock. Nasdaq here, you can see around 10 o'clock. Let me just leave that circle on the S&P here as well. Dow Jones around 10 o'clock, just finding support all morning, and then pretty much simultaneously you had a breakdown of those levels, and price really started to sort of kick on quite aggressively. S&P didn't come exactly to where we talked about in the briefing as a possible place to get in, but not far away. That sort of buy the dip mentality is still there. It's not going away anytime soon, it seems. Nasdaq slightly more messy in terms of a place to get in, but you can see the break happened, and it was at the same time it started to reverse. The Dow came down by the dip again. You can see from that move working very well, and we're sort of consolidating round now. I mean, we haven't really chosen a direction for the Dow Jones, whereas the Nasdaq and S&P have both pushed on to their respective highs, only to start coming down a bit now. The DAX, if we have a look at that as well, around that sort of time found support, and there you can see just after 10 as well, that's when you got the breakthrough and the gap was filled on that trade. Since then it has been quite choppy, as you see here. We pushed higher, pushed lower, and now it seems R1's a bit of a magnet, it keeps coming back. Probably best to leave alone, especially with some data out tomorrow, and then the Thursday ECB. Would be wise to sort of be quite cautious on that market. It followed the Euro stocks, which filled that gap quite a lot earlier on in the morning. Did take some time, but the DAX, Dow, Nasdaq, S&P all pushing low at the same time, something we haven't really seen for a while in terms of that correlation. But it was a nice technical push. Look for a place to reverse the move where the buyers are previously taken in, and you can see for the DAX, pretty much the Dow and the S&P, it was all those previous highs or the gap higher that offered good support for the buyers to come in again in that market. Gold as well, and you know, it's not uncommon to see this in gold, that when you do get a this sort of big crash, flash crash almost in gold, if you like, when there's no real reason behind it, a lot of the time price will sort of come back to where the move started, and we can see here we pretty much found resistance on near where that high was. Obviously the push higher helped at the time by that weaker dollar, and I'm just gonna, before I talk about the calendar for tomorrow, I'm just gonna bring up the dollar index on a longer term chart, just to show you the level, and I'll switch my chart over in a second, so don't worry if you can't see it at the moment. Okay, we just make it the maximum. Okay, cool. Right, so if you have a look just where my mouse is now, we're trading here at 90 on the index. The lowest obviously been for a while. You'll be hearing about that for a while. Obviously last January, a few months into the year, people were saying, you know, it's the worst start for a dollar for 44 years. You know, when could we see a bit of a correction? Analysts this week, I've been reading quite a bit. Okay, this is the time where we might start to see that. Dollar has been weak again this week, and as you see on the lows, but we're coming to a point now where previously around sort of 2009, almost 2010, around this area, we've had good price action before. Something to be aware of, I would say, for anyone that is long or short the dollar. Could be an interesting point whether to take profit or to perhaps look to get in a position. So going back to that Aussie dollar, let me just transition there. Especially if this sort of iron ore problem becomes a bit larger, obviously quite a decent impact commodities on the Australian economy. Could be an opportunity here if the dollar starts to strengthen, considering how high the Aussie dollar got, high since, well, you can see there sort of September time. Wouldn't be surprising to see perhaps over the next few weeks, if this is the case where the dollar starts to increase, we drift back down to sort of maybe around this October the 13th level. So something to bear in mind with that dollar index, in terms over the next few days. If you start to see the dollar picking up and we find support on this area, could be a bit of a turnaround. Data calendar for tomorrow. Obviously you can see a bit of data overnight. Nothing too major before we have some data out of Germany, 8:30 market manufacturing, and then throughout Europe as well you get that reading at 9 o'clock, manufacturing, services and comp flash PMI. 9:30 usual time slot for the pound data, which could be quite interesting because you've got the earnings as well. So can we see a bit of wage growth in the UK? It would be quite interesting to see if we can. The inflation sort of was steady or just a tiny bit of a miss last time, so it could be a decent opportunity for the pound, the sterling bulls to come in again and push us beyond this 140 if that data reading beats expectations. Into the afternoon, 2:45, 3 o'clock US data before oil comes back with that usual 3:30 slot on the Wednesday. So data calendar pretty decent tomorrow, especially ahead of the Thursday ECB. So next couple of days could offer some good opportunities intraday, and also perhaps with this dollar talk more medium term as well. Just a quick look back before I wrap up, just to see if any of the markets are doing anything at the moment. Euro are £1, not doing too much. Aussie dollar still drifting lower from that really nice resistance level, previous support from yesterday. Yen similar, not doing too much. Oil, keep an eye on R1, but obviously the data out. Equities just coming off their higher levels. DAX obviously slowed down as well, and gold coming back to R1. Any questions? If you're still in the chat, feel free to put them in. Obviously I'll send this out, and even if it's an email later on, do feel free to get in contact. Thank you.